We're forever being warned about sharing too much of our personal information, and yet for the 2011 census we're expected to divulge 11 pages of our most intimate details, with everything from how many people live under our roof to whether we choose to cycle or drive to work. Now, some groups are calling for an all-out boycott of the questionnaire, and in a moment you'll hear from one such man who's refusing to fill it in for racial reasons. But first, why is this information needed? Well, to find out, I spoke to Helen Bray from the Census Office and asked how the details are used.
Well, the information that we collect is used in order to produce statistics, numbers of people and population estimates, which are then used by the decision makers when they're planning services like roads, school places, hospitals, and so they're used by those decision makers and also used by people who allocate funding, by central government allocating funding down to local government. So it is really important that everybody is included on a questionnaire.
Now, we're constantly being told to watch out with which personal details we're sharing with the world, to safeguard what we're putting out there to avoid identity theft. Why is the information that we share on the census any different? Why should we be more open when it comes to sharing that information?
It's really important that people do understand that we look after their data really carefully. So they give us their personal information and we keep it absolutely confidential. So we keep it under lock and key for 100 years. We don't share it with local councils or other government departments. We guarantee we'll keep it confidential, and then in 100 years' time it's released so that people can have a look and track their ancestors.
The 1991 census was the first to include questions on ethnicity. Why is information about our racial background needed?
Well, it's really important that people's ethnic background and also for the first time their national identity and their main language that they speak is included. And one of the reasons for that is that the information is used in order to monitor discrimination. So we ask people about their educational qualifications, their employment, and that gives the government the chance to have a look and monitor against discrimination on either the grounds of race, ethnic background or religion.
Unlike questions about our age or our gender, perhaps, when it comes to our ethnic group and how we self-classify our race, it's not really straightforward. So how does this get resolved when it comes to the census? Does it pose a problem that this is such an open question?
Well, I think that's the beauty of adding the national identity question, so that people are able to say that they feel of a certain national identity, and they can tick a number of boxes for that, so that you could feel that you were English and British or another national identity, and you could write that in. And then as a separate question, we ask what's your ethnic group. And then there are a whole section of different classifications of your ethnic group, and under any of those sections, then you can actually write in the way in which you want to classify yourself. So it gives a huge range of options for people to really decide how they feel they're best described.
You've got the census bus tour coming to the East Midlands on Wednesday. What can we expect from the bus tour?
Okay, so the bus tour is our chance to answer any questions that people might have. So we've got a whole range of people on the bus who should know the answers to any of the questions that the local community might have. So people should come along and have a conversation with us, and we'll try to answer their questions. We'll reassure them about how confidential their data is and how important it is to us to keep it safe, just as it's important to local residents.
Helen Bray from the 2011 Census Office there, and you can expect the Census bus tour to be coming to a street near you. Now, as that tour rolls into the East Midlands this coming week, self-titled militant anarchist Albert Beale is boycotting the questionnaire for, among other things, racial reasons. And Albert Beale joins us on BBC Radio Nottingham.
Good afternoon, hello. Can I just say that I describe myself as a militant pacifist? I'm also an anarchist, but my greatest militancy is over my pacifism.
Well, the census gives a good insight, I think, some would say, into life in Britain, and an insight like none other. And over the past 2 decades, it's been an important part of painting a racial picture of Britain, and yet that's something you strongly object to.
Well, I have boycotted the last 3 censuses, as I shall do this one, for a large number of reasons. The race question is one very important reason, but by far not the only reason. But I've been struggling against racism since my school days. I was involved in things like campaigning against the apartheid regime in South Africa and organising demonstrations to stop the cricket and rugby tours from South Africa in the 70s and all that sort of thing. I've opposed the irrationality of racism for a long time. And part of the irrationality of racism is that racial classifications are actually meaningless. They're trivial compared to other differences between different people. And the idea of having to tick a box on a form, whether it's the census or any other form, that defines what racial background you have, makes me think I've suddenly gone back in time and I'm living in Nazi Germany or apartheid South Africa, where everybody's classified by such irrelevancies as what colour skin they happen to have. And I will not classify myself in that way. And if people ask me to, I will ignore them.
So what would you tick, or what would you answer on a form that asks for your race or ethnic background?
I will cross it out and say I'm a member of the human race, and I object. I think it's a very racist question to ask, and I will never cooperate with that sort of question. And the fact that people try to pressure me into doing so reinforces my concern. If I lived in Nazi Germany or apartheid South Africa and I refused to own up to what race I was, I'd be locked up. And it seems to me I have exactly the same attitude towards it here. I will not be classified by something as scientifically meaningless and as dangerous as race. Your person from the Office of National Statistics just now was saying, well, it's all very secure and all very safe. Well, we've seen WikiLeaks. We know how safe things are. And of course, this time it's being done in a much more computerized way as well as just on bits of paper. Do we really believe that all these questionnaires are going to be safe for 100 years? I mean, when we hand in our census questionnaires, those who do so, they don't just kind of tick us off and then tear our name and address off the top and only file the anonymous information for the sake of statistics. Our individual details are kept logged against that information for the next 100 years. Well, and I'm not prepared to have that happen to me.
The privacy issue aside, you argue, as you said there, that race is an unscientific category and it's an illogical way to divide people. And whatever you think about classifying people by their ethnicity or their race, the reality is, on a purely social level, race is still a huge divider.
It is. And it is a divider because of the mentality that asks questions like that. If I want a world where what colour skin or what colour hair or what size of nose somebody's got is the last thing you care about, then I want to live that society now. I'm not going to say I will cooperate with these dreadful things because it's a route to something better. If it's the same reason I'm a pacifist. If I want a certain sort of world in the future, I have to live that sort of world now. You look at kids in schools. I mean, if you ask kids of a few years old, who's the person you sit next to in the nursery or whatever, and they describe their friend whoever, the last thing they normally say is what colour skin they've got. I mean, kids have got enough sense to know that's not an important characteristic of people in the sort of world we've got these days. And I will not classify myself like that, and I don't want anybody else to be classified like that. I won't cooperate with it.
Isn't it important to get some statistics around the way that people of different ethnic backgrounds are living in Britain?
Of course, I mean, that's part of the whole thing about if we have all these statistics, we'll be able to plan services fairly and have them all in the right place. Well, frankly, I don't believe that for a moment. We've been having censuses since the 19th century. We still know perfectly well that the hospitals and schools and libraries and post offices are in short supply. We haven't got the services what we want, where we want, and where people need them. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's not really a genuine reason. I mean, the point of those statistics is not to make sure that everybody has the services they need. Otherwise, Britain wouldn't be in the state it's in today. The reason for those statistics is to help, if you like, richer people who run this society to more efficiently ration services for the poor. It is not a way of making sure that everybody has what they need, because if it was that, after 200 years of censuses, we would have what we need.
All that having been said, by refusing to fill out the details, do you worry that where public money is being spent, you're, to a certain extent, cutting off your nose to spite your face?
I realise that these figures are used for certain purposes, but we have to accept, as even the Office of National Statistics does, that the census is... I mean, the last one that was done fairly accurately was in 81. Both the one 20 years ago and the one 10 years ago, particularly the one 10 years ago, were done on the cheap. They weren't done in the same meticulous fashion as they used to be. I know people who worked as census enumerators in years gone by, and there is no doubt that even the official government statisticians after the last census 10 years ago admitted they had to make an adjustment of about 1 million people to get the figures right out of a population of, 60-odd million. That is such a large error that even they admitted themselves. How can you make those adjustments? Because it's normally something like census data you use as the reference to make adjustments to. I mean, the whole thing is illogical nonsense. They know the figures are inaccurate, and it's therefore not sensible to use census figures as a way of defining other things, because the census itself has been inaccurate for the last couple of decades. I mean, you check with the ONS, they will say that they had to make corrections of around 1 million. They realised that the count was out by about 1 million 10 years ago, and this time it's obviously going to be even worse.
Well, when the census comes to our doors next month, I assume that with that all in mind, you won't be filling it out.
Oh, indeed I won't. No, I shall ignore it, as I have done the last one and the one before that and the one before that.
And would you recommend others to do the same?
I very much hope that other people burst the bubble of the census. It's promoted on false grounds, and it has a lot of very unpleasant aspects to it. If it was simply a matter of somebody saying, we want to know what the basic head count is in this country, very, very basic, and it was absolutely anonymous and guaranteed, then yes, that's interesting to know, and I might go along with it. But there are so many myths about it, there are so many ways in which it's dangerous, and there are so many things that are claimed for it which are simply untrue, that for all those grounds I will boycott it, and I hope many other people do.